Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. How much do pollutants actually affect T levels and progress in the gym? Is it a coping mechanism who aren't willing to work as hard compared to guys in the 50s? There were harmful pollutants in the air back then too. It's 100% a cope. It's 100% a cope, because here's the thing. Yes, we know that from the 60s up to the day, there's been something like, what is it, a 12% reduction in average testosterone at the national level in America. Only environmental pollutants are only contributing to a small amount in that. It's actually believed by most of the researchers that obesity is the largest cause. Well, if you're lifting weights and eating well and you're not walking around at 30% body fat and you're physically active and lifting weights, you don't have that same reduction. Okay? You don't have it. You're not in the demographic that's being affected. Furthermore, small changes in testosterone like that don't have meaningful impacts on muscle growth. And I'm sorry to have to tell guys this. I've made a lot of videos on that, explaining how fluctuations in testosterone affect muscle growth a lot less than people realize. Only on the extreme ends do they matter in the normal range. Again, people are confusing people who utilize and use very high doses of testosterone. Right? We're not talking about people who are just increasing their test levels 50%. We're talking about people who are increasing their levels 500%, 1,000%, 10,000%, are gaining muscle from it. People aren't getting big by just a little tiny boost from a syringe. That's not actually going to give you that much muscle. It's not going to be 10 pounds or anything crazy. So when we start dealing with minor shifts, we're talking about someone who has a really high outlier testosterone, like the top 10% of the population, versus someone who's almost clinically low. You're only talking about a couple of pounds of muscle difference. And these changes that we're talking about for the average population based upon all these lifestyle and environmental factors aren't at those levels. They're not that extreme. They probably are not enough from all those factors combined, with pollutants being a smaller part, but all those factors combined, they're just not enough to make that big of a difference. No, people are just lazy in the gym and they eat like crap. I mean, and let's talk about, what do we mean by environment? Well, bad diet. That's what we mean. So if you're just eating garbage, if you're eating garbage, then you're actually still creating the environment that you're complaining about. You're creating it physically. Not that it matters that much, but come on, guys. It's because people aren't willing to eat right and they're not willing to train and sleep. That's it. That's it. It's nothing to do with their testosterone is too low. It's got to be pretty extreme for that to matter meaningfully enough to measure. It matters a tiny amount. All right, next question. Thoughts on weighted push-ups for a push variation, maybe with a weighted vest or plates on the back? Your only options are a weighted vest. You're not going to do it with plates. It's just too awkward. It's too awkward. You're never going to get any substantial weight on there. Now, that being said, I never do them. I don't do them. Have I ever prescribed them to clients? On occasion. So if I'm willing to prescribe it to a client from time to time, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, obviously. But as far as just some hypertrophy variation for a supplemental lift, sure. Some weighted push-ups are fine. For a lot of people, it's just not practical, because at a certain point, you can get strong enough to where if you're throwing 45 pounds in a weight vest and doing push-ups with it, probably push-ups on a bar or whatever, you're not going to do them on the floor when you've got any muscle. Plus, again, the wrist strain and everything else, you probably need to do them on a bar. It's going to be hard to get enough resistance to do anything with once you're decently strong. It really is. Unless you're doing very, very high reps. And again, that has its place. If you want to do something like that as a variation and you're training for a phase with some really high reps, or just as a one-off supplemental lift, sure. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It can be viable, right? It's still a decent exercise. It's still a decent movement pattern. Builds pecs, builds triceps, builds front delts, build a little bit of your abs. So yeah, go ahead. But if you have access to a lot of equipment, there's just better things out there. You know, if you have access to multiple barbells, dumbbells, all that stuff, odds are I'm probably not going to prescribe them. But you know, if you want to do them, it's a good exercise. Perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with push-ups. It's just that it's not always the most practical thing, depending on your strength level, what you have available. The fact that a lot of people just do them goofball anyways. You know, you don't need to be doing push-ups with your hands on the floor if we're going to lift heavy weights, because you're just putting stress on your wrists and inflammation. But you know, if you have bar or whatever to do them on, and that's how most serious lifters do them, who do them, they usually do them with a weight vest and like a bar low down on their rack, right? And they can put their feet up on bench or whatever to get a better angle with a weight vest. But they're still doing very high reps usually. So it falls under your pump work, which again has its place for getting you stronger. All right, next question and last question of the week. Minimalist linear progression programs get you strong fast but lead to overuse injuries. Could you switch up exercises every training block to avoid overuse but still get the benefits of high specificity? No, you couldn't. Example, 2 months of back squat and medium grip bench, conventional deadlift, and 2-month block of front squat, close grip bench, sumo deadlift, and so on and so forth. Okay, here's your issue. Number one, you're not getting all the benefits of even doing the linear minimalist stuff because you're not keeping the same lifts in. Okay, this type of training gets you strong because you practice those lifts all the time. And you get really good at those lifts, and therefore you can load them heavy. If you're rotating them, you're not actually getting the benefits, so why bother? Right? Don't hybrid stuff like this. There's no need. The other thing is, you know, if you're switching them all the time, depends on how often you're switching them. So I don't know. People ask things like this, and I've got to be honest, I don't think this is the best approach. I think if you're going to do high specificity programming, you need to do it only for your main lifts. You need to limit your total volume of those main lifts. Keep them in there, just keep your classic ones in, but your rep ranges need to be rotated a lot as far as the heavy stuff goes, which again, what do you see me doing these days in 5-3-1? So I change rep ranges on the heavy sets every week and a 3-week rotation, and then I do pump work, sub-maximal pump work, not to failure, for volume on the back end. Right? And then everything else is supplemental work, which is not minimalist. It's not minimalist because most of our training volume is not coming from, you know, whatever the 3 or 4 lifts that you're doing. We're doing 7 or 8 other lifts through the week. And we can rotate those a little bit more. That's really where you get the rotation, but that's not doing minimalism. Minimalism with linear type programming means you come in and do like 4 exercises a week for 3 years straight. Hey, that's what we're talking about. And people are like, well, no one does that. Well, you guys clearly are unaware that they do. I don't know what rock people live under who don't think that that's what happens in strength training. Guys come in, squat, bench, deadlift, and row. Or squat, bench, deadlift, and do pull-ups. And that's all they do. And they do a ton of them. And that's the issue, is that they're doing 15 sets of squats every week. They're doing 15 sets of deadlifts and bench every week, and so on and so forth. Right? That's what we're seeing, or a minimum of 10 of each one of those lifts. And they're not always doing a lot of supplemental work that they're rotating, and this is where the overuse and imbalances accrue. So your real solution is to rotate the rep ranges frequently for the heavy work. Limit the total volumes even on the pump work. You can use pump work on those movements. Limit your total volume of those exercises and fill the gap in with supplemental lifts that you can rotate. But we're not doing linear periodization minimalism anymore at that point, are we? So it's really not the same thing. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.